The European Commission has launched legal proceedings against Britain after London introduced plans to override some post-Brexit trade rules.
This is illegal. The UK bill is extremely damaging to mutual trust and respect between the EU and the UK. It has created deep uncertainty and casts a shadow over our overall cooperation. All at a time when respect for international agreements has never been more important. That is why the Commission has today decided to take legal action against the United Kingdom for not complying with significant parts of the Protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland.
Officials said the UK's move to unilaterally change some of the Northern Ireland's post-Brexit trade agreement has no legal justification. The EU has begun 3 legal proceedings in response to what it claims to be Britain's failure to implement the protocol governing the Northern Irish trading. A spokesman for Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that Britain is disappointed with the EU's decision. Britain maintains that its plans do not violate international law. On Monday, the UK introduced legislation which would remove customs checks on some goods entering Northern Ireland from the rest of Britain. London says the changes are necessary to improve trade and to reduce bureaucratic red tape. Amina Taylor is our correspondent joining us from London to tell us more about this. Well, I just read the news, Amina, but why don't you break it down for us in layman terms and tell us exactly what has happened?
Well, essentially, the EU is fed up now with all of this foolishness, if I can coin a technical term there, Kaveh. Because as Dominic Cummings, the man who was the right hand to Boris Johnson at the height of these Brexit negotiations, as he's come out and said, they did not understand fully what they were signing when it came to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Boris Johnson and a lot of his senior team hardly read it. And it was this idea that just saying they were getting Brexit done would be enough to give them the electoral leg up that they so desperately needed at that time. And one since happened is essentially the very obvious, blatant consequences of not fully comprehending what you're signed up to. Well, that's come home to roost because a lot of things were kicked into the long grass. The idea that they did not want to undermine the Good Friday Peace Agreement, but essentially would be okay with this kind of fudge border in the Irish Sea scenario where one side of the country stayed in the single customs union and the other side was privy to the new rules and regulations. And now that simply isn't working. Just very briefly on the 3 issues that the European Union are at odds with and have threatened that legal action over. The first one is that Britain simply isn't complying with the rules that it's already set up. There are not enough officers to properly look at these customs, this border, to make sure goods and services that are crossing the borders are adequately checked, and that the European Union is not getting the adequate trade data from this. Because if you're not checking the vehicles, you're not checking the goods, how do you know what's in it? How do you know the value of the goods and so forth? And secondly, that the Britain simply just isn't abiding by the rules that are already in place. And what happens next? Something like the Agri deal, where they were talking about how you got goods, especially agricultural goods, across the border from the north of Ireland to the rest of the island of Ireland. Well, what happened there? Who was in charge of checking this? Who was going to be paying for this? What was going to happen in terms of London and Brussels coming to an agreement? And one, remember, Kaveh, that they had signed off on. So it's not as if the European Union here is coming up with new regulations. They're simply saying to London, you're not even abiding by the regulations that we did sign up to. This simply cannot be ethical. And in the words of Maros Shefovich there, who spoke just at the beginning of your piece, it is illegal, and not just that, it's in bad faith. Who would ever sign up to London, to the United Kingdom, when it came to an international agreement of any sort? Is it worth the paper the deal is actually printed on? Well, right now, Brussels and the rest of the EU are saying absolutely not, Kaveh. If you cannot trust the person you're entering to a legal agreement with, what's the point of the agreement?
Well, the European Commission is actually very angered by this naturally, and they have even, as I sifted through this wire here, Amina, they have said that they're going to take two legal actions against the UK, and if nothing comes out of it, or if along with that, they may consider taking this to the Court of Justice, from what I read here. Um, but I'm guessing there's going to be some kind of perhaps settlement on this, or not. How do you see things?
Well, one of the very things that Britain is trying to get out of with these new laws that they're proposing, the ones that Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, read out here, is ensuring that the European Court of Justice is not the final arbitrator in any of these discussions, which is funny because that's exactly what they signed up for. That if any of the parties at any time in these discussions, whether it be the Northern Ireland Protocol or other elements of the bill, if they were not happy or things were not working out, because what Britain is the first state to actually exit the member bloc of the European Union. So this is new ground for everyone. But by signing up and saying essentially you will trust the judgment of a particular body and then wanting to go back on that, because Britain is saying, so who's going to make us? In layman's term, who's going to actually enforce it if we decide we're going to unilaterally pull out, which is what they want to do. And Europe is saying, wait a second, we still have it in writing that we can go to the ECJ and there might be a financial penalty or so on. But Europe is in a weird position here because having signed off on this, with the exception of a trade deal here, which will play into the hands of a lot of those on the right wing who wanted a hard Brexit, they can't really do much at this stage. So they're perhaps imploring and fingers and toes. The United Kingdom will see this prospect of a legal action and back down, or at least tone the rhetoric down, or take some of the more incendiary elements out of this new bill off the table.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, we were just getting cut off there, but I think we got it wrapped up there. Thank you. Amina Taylor there from London, a correspondent. Thanks.